Tai-Ho Kim stared at the strange package on his kitchen table. The delivery drone had dropped it off 10 minutes ago, but he hadn't moved to open it. Next to the package sat a thick envelope with official-looking stamps from the Interstellar Legal Office. "Another bill," he muttered. His small apartment in New Seoul Colony barely felt like home. The walls were thin, and he could hear his neighbors arguing through them. His military pension covered the rent, but not much else. Tai-Ho ran his hand through his short black hair, still cut in the military style even 3 years after leaving the Army Special Forces. Some habits were hard to break. He finally opened the envelope. The letter inside made no sense at first. "You have inherited all property and assets of Han Kim, your uncle." Tai-Ho frowned. Uncle Han. The man had vanished 20 years ago on a deep space expedition. Everyone thought he was dead. Tai-Ho had only met him twice as a child. The letter continued. "The property is located on Havrian 9. Outer Rim. Transportation has been arranged if you wish to claim your inheritance." Attached was a ticket for a ship leaving in 3 days. Tai-Ho put the letter down and opened the package. Inside was an old holophoto of Uncle Han standing in front of a small building on what must be Havrian 9. The sky in the image was a strange purple color. There was also a key card and a data chip. Tai-Ho inserted the chip into his worn tablet. A video played. An older man with a weathered face appeared. "Tai-Ho, if you're watching this, then I'm gone. I know we barely knew each other, but you're my only family left. I've left you everything I have. It's not much, but it's important. More important than you can imagine. Come to Havrian 9. What I've discovered there needs protection. I trust you'll do the right thing." The video ended. Tai-Ho turned off the tablet and walked to his window. Outside, the endless towers of New Seoul stretched into the hazy sky. His reflection looked back at him, tired eyes, the scar across his jaw from his last mission, shoulders that still stood straight despite everything they'd carried. His apartment suddenly felt smaller than ever. The silence pressed in on him like it did most nights. On those nights, the memories came back. The firefights, the screams, the faces of those he couldn't save. The doctors called it PTSD. Tai-Ho called it failing to leave the war behind. He looked at the ship ticket again. Havrian 9. A frontier planet on the edge of human space. Lawless. Dangerous. His phone beeped with another job rejection. 20 applications this month, 0 interviews. No one wanted to hire an ex-soldier with adjustment issues. "What the hell?" Tai-Ho said to the empty room. "It's not like I have anything keeping me here." 3 days later, Tai-Ho stood in the spaceport with a single duffel bag containing everything he owned. The massive colony ship loomed before him, headed for the outer rim with stops at several frontier worlds. "Ticket, please," said the board attendant. As Tai-Ho handed it over, a voice announced the final boarding call. The attendant looked at him. "First time off-world?" "No," Tai-Ho replied, "but first time this far out." Havrian 9. "Ha. Rough place. Business or pleasure?" Tai-Ho thought about the strange inheritance waiting for him across the stars. "Family matters." "Well, good luck with that. Boarding tube is to your right." Tai-Ho walked toward the ship, each step taking him further from his empty life and closer to something unknown. The key card felt heavy in his pocket. For the first time in years, he felt something other than numbness. It wasn't hope, not exactly, but it was something close to curiosity. As the ship's doors closed behind him, Tai-Ho Kim left Earth behind, unaware that the inheritance waiting for him would change not just his life, but his understanding of what life could be. The colony ship hummed as it moved through space. Tai-Ho spent most days in his small cabin. He didn't talk to other passengers. Old habits from the military made him watch everyone, looking for threats that weren't there. On the 5th day, Tai-Ho went to the ship's viewing deck. The vast darkness of space stretched out before him, dotted with distant stars. Earth was now just a tiny dot of light among thousands. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice next to him. Tai-ho turned to see a woman with short black hair and glasses. She wore the blue uniform of a science officer. "I'm Ji-Soo Park," she said, holding out her hand. "Xenobiologist. I'm headed to the research station on Havrian 9. Tai-ho shook her hand. "Tai-ho Kim. Just a passenger." "Nobody goes to Havrian 9 as just a passenger," Ji-Soo said with a smile. "It's too far and too wild for tourists." Tai-ho didn't answer. He wasn't ready to share his story with a stranger. Ji-Soo seemed to understand. "The ship serves dinner in the main hall at 1800 hours. The food is better than the stuff they send to the cabins." For 2 days, Tai-ho avoided the main hall, but cabin fever finally drove him there. He found Ji-Soo sitting alone and joined her table. "So you decided to join the living," she said. Tai-ho almost smiled. The walls were closing in. As they ate, Ji-Soo told him about her work. "Havrian 9 has one of the most unique ecosystems we've found. Plants that move like animals. Animals that photosynthesize like plants." "Sounds dangerous," Tai-ho said. "It can be. But that's not the biggest danger on Havrian 9. Ji-Soo leaned forward. "The planet is on the edge of regulated space. The perfect place for people who don't want to be found." "Like who?" "Miners looking for easy money. Scientists doing banned research. Smugglers. People running from their past." She studied his face. "Which one are you?" Tai-ho pushed his food around his plate. "I'm claiming an inheritance. My uncle lived there." Ji-Soo's eyes widened. "Was your uncle Han Kim?" Tai-ho looked up in surprise. "You knew him?" Everyone in the research community knew of him. He found species no one had documented before, but he was secretive about his work. Ji-Soo lowered her voice. "There were rumors he found something big about 5 years ago, something he wouldn't share. Then he stopped coming to the research station." The ship's announcement system interrupted them. "Attention all passengers. We will reach Havrian 9 in 6 hours. Please prepare for landing procedures." As Tai-ho packed his few belongings, he thought about what Ji-Soo had said. What had Uncle Han found? Was that what he'd inherited? The landing was rough. Havrian 9 had strong winds and no proper spaceport. The ship touched down on a flat area of hard-packed red soil. When the doors opened, hot, strange-smelling air rushed in. Tai-ho stepped onto the planet's surface. The sky was indeed purple, just like in the holophoto. 2 small suns hung low on the horizon. The settlement was a collection of prefab buildings, shipping containers converted to shops, and a few structures made of local materials. People of different Earth ethnicities mixed with a few non-human species Tai-ho didn't recognize. Ji-Soo appeared beside him. "Welcome to the edge of civilization." A short man with a datapad approached them. "New arrivals. I'm Du Young, settlement administrator. I need to scan your IDs and entry permits." After the scan, Du Young looked at Tai-ho with new interest. "You're Han Kim's nephew. I've been expecting you. Your uncle's place is about 20 kilometers from here. I can arrange transport tomorrow morning." "Thank you," Tai-ho said. As Du Young walked away, Ji-Soo touched Tai-ho's arm. "Be careful who you tell about your inheritance. Some people here would kill for less." Tai-ho's hand instinctively moved to where his sidearm would have been in the military. "I can take care of myself." "I hope so," Ji-Soo said, looking around the rough settlement. "Because on Havrian 9, no one else will." The next morning, Du Young arrived with a dust-covered rover. "Ready to see your inheritance." Tai-ho nodded and climbed in. Ji-Soo was already waiting inside. "Hope you don't mind," she said. "I'm headed to the research station. It's on the way to your uncle's place." The rover moved away from the settlement. The land changed from flat red dirt to rolling hills covered with strange blue-green plants. Some plants moved as the rover passed, turning to follow them like eyes. "Your uncle picked a remote spot," Du Young said. "Very private. Good for his work." "What kind of work?" Tai-ho asked. Du Young shrugged. Han never said. He came to town for supplies, but kept to himself. After an hour, They dropped Ji-Su at the research station, a cluster of white domes surrounded by sensor equipment. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Ji-Su said to Taiho. "Come by if you need help." The rover continued into increasingly wild country. Tall rock formations rose on either side as they entered a narrow valley. Trees with silvery trunks and no leaves lined a small stream. "Almost there," Du-young said. They turned a corner, and Taeho saw a building nestled against a cliff face. It was larger than he expected. A main structure made of local stone, with several metal outbuildings around it. "Here we are," Du-young said, stopping the rover. "Han's place. Everything is powered by the solar array on the cliff. There's a well for water." Taiho got out and looked around. The place felt empty but well maintained. No dust or signs of abandonment. "Automated systems keep it running," Du-young explained. "Your uncle planned ahead." Du-young handed Taiho a small device. "Local communicator. Signal's not great out here, but it works for emergencies. I'll head back now unless you need me to stay." "I'll be fine," Taiho said. After Du-young left, Taiho stood alone in the silence. Wind blew through the silver trees, making a sound like distant voices. He entered the main building using the key card from the package. Inside was simple but comfortable. Living area, kitchen, bedroom, and a study filled with books and specimens in jars. But no sign of what made this inheritance important. At the back of the house, a heavy metal door required a handprint scan. Taiho pressed his palm against it. To his surprise, it beeped and opened. "DNA recognition," said a computerized voice. "Welcome, Taiho Kim." Beyond the door was a staircase leading underground. Taiho followed it down to a large chamber carved from the rock. The room was cool and dimly lit. In the center sat a massive egg-shaped pod, twice as tall as Taiho. It glowed with a soft blue light. Taiho approached slowly. The pod's surface was smooth and slightly transparent. Through it, he could see something inside, something large. A control panel on the pod's side had a simple red button. Taiho hesitated, then pressed it. The blue light intensified. The pod's surface became transparent. Inside was a creature unlike anything Taiho had ever seen. It looked like a dragon from old Earth legends, but with 6 limbs instead of 4. Its scales were pure white with rainbow highlights where the light hit them. It was curled up, apparently asleep, about the size of a horse. Suddenly, the pod hissed. The top section split open. The creature's eyes snapped open, brilliant purple eyes that focused directly on Taiho. Taiho stepped back, wishing he had a weapon. The creature unfurled itself, stretching long, elegant limbs. It climbed out of the pod with surprising grace and stood before Taiho. Its head tilted, studying him. Then the impossible happened. "You must be Taiho," the creature said in perfect Korean. Its voice was deep but smooth. "I've been waiting for you. I am back. Your Uncle Han saved my life, and now I belong to you." Taiho could only stare in shock as the alien dragon bowed its head respectfully. "We have much to discuss," Bak said. "But first, I'm very hungry. Stasis always leaves me starving." Taiho watched in amazement as Bake moved around the kitchen. The white dragon used its front claws with surprising skill to open the food storage unit. "Your uncle kept dried meat in here," Bak said, pulling out a large package. "He knew I preferred protein after stasis." Taiho finally found his voice. "How can you speak Korean? How can you speak at all?" Bak tore open the package with sharp teeth. "Between bites," he explained, "my kind, the luminary drakes, are telepathic. We understand language concepts naturally. Your uncle taught me to make the sounds with my vocal organs." Bak's throat moved strangely as he spoke. It took 3 years of practice. "What are you?" Taiho asked, still keeping his distance. "I told you. A luminary drake. We come from the Centauri system originally." Bak's purple eyes studied Taiho. "You look like Han. Same eyes." Taiho sank into a chair. This is crazy. My uncle left me an alien dragon. He left me to you because he trusted you, Bax said, and because we are both endangered. Endangered. Bax's expression grew sad. My kind is nearly extinct. Hunted for these. He spread one wing, showing scales that glittered with rainbow colors. Our scales absorb and store energy. Very valuable. Very rare. He folded the wing again. Han saved me as a hatchling. Poachers killed my family. Tai-Ho rubbed his temples. And what did you mean about me being endangered? Han studied your military records. He said you were lost after leaving the army, fighting inner battles with no purpose to guide you. The words hit too close to home. Tai-Ho stood up abruptly. I need air. Outside, Tai-Ho paced under the alien sky. He needed to think. He could sell this place. Sell Bug too, probably for a fortune. Go back to Earth and live comfortably. The thought made him feel sick. A crash from inside made him run back in. He found Bake crouched in a corner, shaking. What's wrong? Tai-Ho asked. Danger, Bake whispered. Someone comes. Tai-Ho listened but heard nothing. How do you know? I sensed them. 3 humans, armed, moving through the valley. Bake looked at Tai-Ho. They want me. Tai-Ho's military instincts kicked in. He searched the house until he found a weapon locker. Inside was a standard pulse rifle. He checked it quickly, fully charged. Stay here, he told back. I'll check it out. Using the rocks as cover, Tai-Ho circled the property. Soon he spotted them. 3 rough-looking men with scanning equipment and weapons. Before he could plan his next move, his head filled with pain. Memories of battle, explosions, screaming comrades. A PTSD episode, happening at the worst possible moment. Tai-Ho fell to his knees, the rifle dropping from his hands. The flashback gripped him completely. He couldn't move, couldn't think. Then he felt something cool touch his forehead. The pain eased. The memories faded. Beck stood over him. One claw gently pressed to Tai-Ho's temple. I can help, the Drake said softly. Your mind is wounded. I can soothe it. The men's voices grew closer. Tai-Ho grabbed his rifle and stood. We need to hide. Back in the house, Tai-Ho locked down all systems and led Buck to a hidden basement room. How did you do that? Tai-Ho asked. How did you stop my episode? Energy manipulation. We don't just absorb physical energy. We can sense and affect mental energy too. Back's eyes glowed faintly. Han and I discovered it accidentally. He had bad dreams. I helped. Tai-Ho studied the creature before him. Not just a valuable alien, but a being with empathy and intelligence. Who wants you? Tai-Ho asked. Many people, but most likely the mining corporation. Some Min is their leader here. He offered Han money for me many times. Bake looked worried. If they find me, they will take me apart to study my energy abilities. Tai-Ho checked his rifle again. That's not going to happen. For the first time since leaving the military, Tai-Ho felt sure of his purpose. This strange alien needed protection. And somehow, Tai-Ho needed Bake too. Tai-Ho and Bake stayed hidden in the basement room for hours. Above them, they heard footsteps and voices as the men searched the house. They won't find us, Tai-Ho whispered. This room doesn't show up on scans. Back's ears twitched as he listened. They're saying something about Sungmin being angry if they return empty-handed. Finally, the sounds faded. Tai-Ho crept upstairs to check. The house was empty but messy. The men had searched everything. They're gone for now, he told Back, but they'll be back with more people. Tai-Ho grabbed a backpack and filled it with food and supplies. We need to leave. Is there a place we can go? Bake thought for a moment. There are mountains to the north. Han took samples there. He said the area was too rough for most humans to travel. Perfect, Tai-Ho said. But first, we need help. Using the communicator Du Young had given him, Taiho called Jisoo at the research station. He told her about Buck, the living luminary drake. That's incredible, Jisoo said. Bring him here. I can help. An hour later, Taiho and Bake approached the research station. Bake wore a cover made from blankets to hide his glowing white scales. Jisoo gasped when she saw Buck. He's beautiful, she whispered. Inside her private lab, Jisoo examined Buck with great care. I've only seen pictures of luminary drakes in research papers. Everyone thought they were extinct. Not extinct, just hiding, Buck said. Jisoo jumped back in surprise. You can speak. While Buck explained his abilities to Jisoo, Taiho found Han's research notes on a computer in the lab. The notes showed that Han had been studying the drakes for years. He believed a small group of them might still live in the northern mountains. Han was right, Jisoo said, looking at the notes. If there are more luminary drakes out there, they must be protected. Their energy abilities could change how we power our colonies. She looked at Taiho. But Sung Min and his corporation would just exploit them. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. A voice on the speakers said, "Attention all personnel. Mining Corporation security forces are approaching the main gate. This is not a drill." Jisoo moved quickly. They must have tracked you here. We need to go now. I have a research rover that can take us into the mountains. As they ran to the vehicle bay, a loud explosion shook the building. Through a window, Taiho saw armed men entering the station. At their head was a tall man in an expensive suit. That's Sung Min, Jisoo said, the corporation's leader on Havrian 9. They reached the rover just as the first gunshots rang out. Jisoo started the engine while Taiho returned fire with his pulse rifle. Get in, Jisoo shouted. Taiho jumped into the rover. Buck was already inside, his wings folded tight to fit in the small space. As they sped away from the station, energy blasts hit around them. One blast struck too close, and the rover swerved. They're going to hit us, Jisoo cried. Buck's eyes began to glow bright purple. He stretched out one wing toward the back window. The scales glowed with increasing brightness. What are you doing? Taiho asked. Showing you what got my kind hunted to near extinction, Buck said. A pulse of pure energy shot from Buck's wing, striking the ground between them and their pursuers. The blast created a deep crater, stopping the chase vehicles. Buck slumped back, looking tired. Energy absorption works both ways. I can release it too, but it drains me. Jisoo drove the rover into a dense forest of tall silver trees. We should be safe here for now. The trees block scanner signals. As night fell on Havrian 9, Taiho looked at the strange alien who had just saved their lives and the scientist who had risked everything to help them. The northern mountains are still a long way off, Jisoo said, and Sung Min won't give up easily. Taiho checked his rifle. Then we'd better get moving at first light. We have a drake sanctuary to find. The morning sun turned the sky a deep purple. Taiho woke up stiff from sleeping in the rover. Jisoo was already awake, studying a map on her tablet. The mountains are here, she said, pointing to the screen. About 3 days' travel if we keep moving. Bake stretched his 6 limbs. His white scales glittered in the sunlight. The land gets rougher from here. The rover won't make it all the way. Taiho checked their supplies. We have food for 5 days if we're careful. Water purifiers for the streams. They started their journey, with Jisoo driving the rover through the silver forest. The trees grew closer together as they moved deeper into the wilderness. Strange animals watched them from the branches. Creatures with too many eyes and blue fur. What are those? Taiho asked. Tree leapers, Buck answered. Harmless unless you disturb their nests. By midday, the forest opened into a wide valley covered with tall blue grass. The grass moved like waves in the wind. Jisoo stopped the rover. We need to be careful here, Buck warned. Grass snakes hunt in these fields. Snakes? Taiho asked. Not like earth snakes. These are bigger, and they hunt in packs. Tai-ho readied his rifle. How do we cross? Bake closed his eyes for a moment. I can sense 3 packs. We need to drive straight through, as fast as possible. Don't stop no matter what. Jisoo pushed the rover to its top speed. They raced across the field, the blue grass whipping against the windows. Suddenly, the ground beside them erupted. A massive snake-like creature, as thick as Tai-ho's leg and covered in blue scales, lunged at the rover. Keep going. Tai-ho shouted as more snakes burst from the grass. One snake landed on the roof. Its weight made the rover swerve. Tai-ho opened his window and fired the pulse rifle. The snake fell away, but more were coming. Bak's eyes glowed purple. He placed his claws on the rover's metal roof. Energy crackled around his scales. A pulse spread outward, knocking the snakes back. They reached the other side of the field, the rover dented but still running. Bake looked tired again after using his energy. You okay? Tai-ho asked him. I need to rest, Bak said. Using energy this way takes much strength. They traveled until sunset, when the rover finally stopped working. A snake had damaged the engine. We walk from here, Tai-ho said. They made camp near a small stream. While Jisoo set up the tent, Tai-ho kept watch. Bak hunted and returned with 2 fish-like creatures. Safe to eat, he said. Han and I ate these often. After cooking the fish over a small fire, they ate in silence. The strange calls of night animals filled the darkness. How did you end up with Tai-ho's uncle? Jisoo asked Bak. Bak's purple eyes grew sad. Poachers killed my family when I was just hatched. They wanted our scales for energy tech. Han found me while exploring. He killed the poachers and took me to his home. Bake looked at Tai-ho. He said humans weren't all bad. Some were worth protecting. In the middle of the night, Tai-ho woke to a strange sound. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside the tent. The ground was shaking. Earthquake, he wondered. Bake appeared beside him. No, stompers. A herd is coming this way. Soon they saw them. Massive 6-legged beasts moving through the forest, knocking down trees in their path. The herd stretched as far as they could see. If they come this way, they'll crush us, Jisoo said, joining them. Tai-ho thought quickly. Bak, can you fly with both of us? Not for long, but yes. Then grab our packs. We need to get to higher ground. Bake stretched his wings wide. Tai-ho held Jisoo close as Bak's strong claws gripped them both. With powerful beats of his wings, he lifted them above the trees just as the stompers reached their camp. From the air, the view was breathtaking. The strange landscape of Havrian 9 spread out below them. And ahead, the mountains they sought. There, Bak said, my home. Bake landed on a rocky ledge high above the valley. His wings trembled with exhaustion as he set Tai-ho and Jisoo down. We're close, he said, his voice quiet. The colony is hidden in these mountains. They rested for the night in a small cave. In the morning, Bake led them along narrow paths that wound through the rocky peaks. The air grew colder as they climbed higher. How much farther? Jisoo asked, her breath visible in the cold air. Not far, Bak said. But the last part is tricky. The colony is well hidden. They reached a sheer rock wall that seemed to block their path completely. Bak touched the wall with his claw, feeling along the surface. Here, he said, pushing against what looked like solid rock. A section moved inward, revealing a narrow passage. This way. The passage was dark and tight. Tai-ho had to duck his head as they walked single file. After several minutes, the passage opened into a small chamber lit by glowing blue crystals in the walls. Energy crystals, Bak explained. They respond to our presence. The chamber led to another passage that sloped upward. As they climbed, Tai-ho heard sounds ahead, rustling movements and soft, musical calls. The passage ended suddenly, opening into a vast hidden valley surrounded by mountain peaks. The valley floor was covered with lush plants unlike those in the forest below. A small lake filled the center, its water crystal clear. And there, moving around the lake, were dragons like Bach, luminary drakes in various sizes. Some were white like Bach, others had scales in soft blues and greens. All had the same 6 limbs and glittering scales. "My kind," Bach whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "I never thought I would see them again." The drakes noticed them immediately. Several larger ones approached, their wings half spread in a defensive posture. They made sounds to each other, complex chirps and musical notes. "What are they saying?" Tai-Ho asked. "They're wary of humans," Bach replied. "I'm telling them you're friends." Bach made similar sounds back to the other drakes. One drake, larger than the others with pale blue scales, stepped forward. It stared at Bach with intelligent eyes, then looked at Tai-Ho and Jisoo. "This is Era, the colony leader," Bach said. "She wants to know why I brought humans to their sanctuary." Bach continued the musical conversation with Era. The other drakes gathered around, listening. "I'm explaining about Han, and how you inherited me," Bach told Tai-Ho, "and about Sung Min and the danger." Era made a series of sharp sounds. "She says humans have always hunted their kind." Bach translated, "They don't trust you." Tai-Ho stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible. He removed his weapon and placed it on the ground. "Tell her we came to warn them," he said. "Tell her we want to help." As Bach translated, Tai-Ho noticed something strange. He could almost understand some of the sounds now, as if they were forming words in his mind. "What's happening?" he asked Bach. "I can almost understand her." Bach's eyes widened. "The connection is forming. This is rare, Tai-Ho. Very rare." "What connection?" "Between human and drake. Our minds are linking." Bach looked at Era. "She feels it too. This changes things." Era approached Tai-Ho cautiously. She touched her head to his forehead gently. Images flooded Tai-Ho's mind. Memories of drakes being hunted, of hiding, of struggling to survive. When Era pulled away, Tai-Ho understood. They've been hiding here for generations. Some men cannot find them. Jisoo looked amazed. "You understood her directly." "Yes," Tai-Ho said. "It's like her thoughts became my thoughts." Bach explained, "This is our most guarded secret. Luminary drakes can form mental bonds with compatible species. It's how we survived when we first came to this planet. But we stopped trusting humans when the hunting began." Era made a new sound, gentler this time. Bach nodded. "She says you may stay. Both of you. You are the first humans they have welcomed in 50 years. That night, as they sat around a fire with the drakes, Tai-Ho felt a strange peace. For the first time since leaving the military, he felt part of something important. "I belong here," he thought, watching Bach reunite with his kind. "This is what I was meant to find." 3 days passed in the hidden valley. Tai-Ho learned more about the drakes. Jisoo studied them with respect, taking notes but never treating them like test subjects. The mental connection between Tai-Ho and the drakes grew stronger. He could now understand most of what they said without Bach's help. One morning, a young drake flew into the valley at high speed. It landed hard, its wings shaking with fear. It spoke rapidly to Era. "What's wrong?" Tai-Ho asked. Bach's face darkened. "Humans are coming. Many humans with weapons and machines. They've found the outer entrance to the valley." "Sung Min," Jisoo said. "He must have tracked us somehow." Era gathered the colony. There were 27 drakes in all, many too young or too old to fight. "We need a plan," Tai-Ho said. "How many ways in and out of the valley?" 3 passages, Bach answered. "The one we used, and 2 others higher in the mountains." Tai-Ho thought like a soldier again. "We need to block the main passage and defend the others." A distant explosion shook the ground. Rocks fell from the mountain walls. "They're blasting their way in," Jisoo said. Tai-Ho turned to Era. "Can your people help fight?" The blue drake nodded. Several adult drakes moved forward, ready to defend their home. Beck and I will take the main passage, Taiho said. Jisu, stay with the young ones and elders. If we fail, leave them out through the back passages. Jishu nodded, though she looked afraid. Taiho checked his rifle. Not much charge left. We'll have to make it count. Beck's eyes glowed with determination. I have been saving my energy. They positioned themselves behind rocks near the main passage. Soon they heard voices and saw lights approaching. The first men who stepped into the valley were guards with heavy weapons. Behind them came more guards escorting mining equipment, and behind them all was Sung Min, dressed in expensive protective gear. Find the drakes, Sung Min ordered. Capture the young ones first. They're easier to control. Taiho signaled to Buck. The white drake launched into the air, his scales glowing brightly. The guards fired at him, but Bake was too fast. He released a pulse of energy that knocked several men down. Taiho fired his rifle, hitting the mining equipment. It sparked and smoked. More guards poured in. One fired a net launcher at Buck. The net wrapped around his wings, sending him crashing to the ground. Bake, Taiho shouted, running to help him. A guard stepped in his way. Taiho fought hand-to-hand, using his military training. He knocked the guard down, but more surrounded him. Suddenly, Ara and 5 other drakes swooped down from above. They released energy blasts that scattered the guards, but a heavy weapon fired, hitting one drake who fell from the sky. Taiho reached Buck and cut the net with his knife. We're losing this fight, he said. There are too many of them. Bake looked into Taiho's eyes. There is one more thing we can try. The bond. The complete bond. What do you mean? The ancient bond between Drake and human. It will link our minds completely, amplify both our abilities. But it is dangerous. Not all humans survive it. Another explosion rocked the valley. Some Min's men were setting up a defensive position. More drakes fell under nets and stun weapons. Do it, Taiho said without hesitation. Bake pressed his forehead against Taiho's. Open your mind to me, as I open mine to you. The world disappeared in a flash of white light. Taiho felt Beck's mind merge with his own. Memories flowed between them. Taiho's childhood, his military service, his pain, Beck's hatching, the death of his family, the years with Han. When Taiho opened his eyes, he saw the world differently. He could feel energy flowing around him like currents in water. He could feel Beck's strength as his own. They stood together, human and Drake, now linked in mind and purpose. Ready? Taiho asked, though he didn't need to speak aloud. Ready, Beck replied in Taiho's mind. Together, they turned to face Sung Min and his forces, a shared power building between them that neither had ever known before. A strange light surrounded Taiho and Beck. The guards stopped firing, unsure what was happening. Sung Min stepped forward, his eyes wide with greed and wonder. Capture them alive, he ordered. That energy could power a colony for years. But Taiho and Beck were changing. Taiho felt Beck's thoughts as his own. He could see energy fields around every living thing. Beck's wings spread wide, and Taiho felt as if they were his own wings. Together, Beck's voice said in Taiho's mind. They moved as one being. Taiho leaped higher than any human could jump, landing on a rock above the guards. Beck released a controlled energy pulse that disabled weapons without harming people. How are they doing that? A guard shouted. Taiho spoke, but Beck's voice joined with his, creating a strange harmony. This valley is protected. Leave now. Keep firing. Sung Min commanded. They're just one human and one Drake. More guards advanced. Taiho felt Beck gathering energy from the air, from the ground, from the very mountain itself. It flowed through both of them, growing stronger. Taiho raised his hands as Beck spread his wings. A wave of energy rolled outward, knocking down every guard in its path. Equipment sparked and shut down. The only person left standing was Sung Min. Impossible, Sung Min whispered. The other drakes, seeing what was happening, took to the air. They formed a circle above Taiho and Baek, adding their energy to the bond. Jisoo watched in amazement from her hiding place. The symbiotic bond, she said to herself. It's real. Sung Min backed away slowly. Wait, he said. We can make a deal. Think of the profit we could share. Taiho and Baek moved forward as one. There will be no deal. This colony is under protection now. A new voice spoke from the passage entrance. I agree completely. Do Young walked into the valley. But he was different now. He wore the uniform of the Interstellar Regulatory Commission. Behind him came armed officers in similar uniforms. Sung Min Han, Du Young said formally. You are under arrest for illegal poaching, trespassing on a protected world, and attempted capture of an endangered species. Du Young, Taiho asked, his voice returning to normal as the energy field around him and Baek faded. Agent Du Young of the IRC, he corrected with a small smile. I've been undercover on HFY 9 for 2 years, investigating illegal animal trafficking. Your uncle helped me before he died. The IRC officers surrounded Sung Min and his guards, placing them in restraints. I recorded everything, Du Young said, pointing to a small camera on his uniform. This evidence will ensure the Drakes receive full protection under galactic law. As the energy of the bond faded, Taiho felt tired but whole. The bond had healed something deep inside him. The memories of war that haunted him were still there, but they had lost their power to hurt him. 1 month later, Taiho stood at the entrance to the valley, now marked with official IRC protection signs. Jisoo had set up a proper research station nearby, working with the Drakes to study their energy abilities for peaceful purposes. The Commission has approved your application, Du Young said, handing Taiho a document. You are now the official human guardian of the Luminary Drake Sanctuary. With pay. Taiho smiled. Never thought I'd find a new purpose so far from Earth. Baek landed beside him. Though they no longer shared the intense bond from the battle, a connection remained between them. The Drakes have decided to teach select humans about the bond, Baek said. Era thinks it's time to trust again. And what do you think? Taiho asked. I think my uncle chose well, Baek replied. He knew you would protect us, not exploit us. Your uncle? Taiho was confused. Han Kim was not my master. He was my family. Baek's purple eyes shone with emotion. The inheritance wasn't giving me to you. It was bringing you to us. To heal you. To help us. To create something new. As the suns began to set, turning HFY 9 sky a deep violet, Taiho placed his hand on Baek's shoulder. Together they watched young Drakes playing by the lake, freed from fear for the first time in generations. Ready for patrol? Baek asked. Taiho climbed onto Baek's back, a position that now felt as natural as breathing. Always. They took to the sky, guardian and Drake, protectors of a new beginning. As they soared above the mountains, Taiho finally understood what he had truly inherited, not ownership of an alien creature, but a bond, a purpose, and a home among the stars.